You're still watching Business AM. This is Metropole Television, and today we settle into the telecommunication space in the country. We want to understand the new direction that Telkom Kenya has taken in the economy so that it's clear on exactly what the restructuring at Telkom Kenya really means now. And to help us understand deeper into the new direction that Telkom Kenya has taken, today we are joined by the CEO Telkom Kenya, Mugo Kibati. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We're glad to have you as well. So, for anybody looking at Telkom Kenya now, can you paint a picture of the new direction that you are taking before we delve further into it and understand the opportunities that are available?
To leverage the trends that we are seeing, not just in this market but globally, and to adopt a new strategy for Telkom Kenya, which has culminated in the reorganization that we recently announced. And what we essentially now have are two new service delivery units within Telkom Kenya. One being the consumer, what we refer to as a Telkom consumer business, and the other being Telkom Digital. Telkom consumer business will focus on sort of the retail mass market, the customer. What you have understood to be the mobile phone user. What previously we have referred to as the mobile business, and really we want to clearly communicate to our people, to our team in Telkom, as well as to everybody generally, that the focus now is the consumer. And the medium by which we serve the customer, the service itself, whether mobile or not, the focus is on the consumer. And this is with the realization that going into the future, the mobile consumer will expect a lot more than just mobile connectivity. It is basically going to be a platform. And already we have seen in the last, say, 10 years, the development of the mobile phone from a simple connectivity tool into a platform on which mobile users do a lot of things, where a lot of activities increasingly are transacted on this device. And so it is in cognizance of that fact and understanding that in the recent past there has been a clear acceleration of technological trends that we want to leverage that. And therefore we have reorganized the business, Telkom consumer unit, to be able to do that, take advantage of that. Then we have Telkom Digital. And Telkom Digital really is the unit that caters to our corporate clientele, both private as well as public sector. Also combining what has traditionally been our corporate clientele business with our wholesale carrier business, what you might refer to as undersea cables, landing stations, all this, because we have tremendous amounts of infrastructure in that area. We have 2 of the 3 landing stations in this country. We have a significant amount of fiber across the country, especially intercity fiber. We manage other fiber resources, which we may not own, but that we manage. We combine all this and deploy that resource towards serving corporate and wholesale customers under Telkom Digital. But over and above what we've done traditionally, we want to build a new data center and cloud business and overlay it on our existing infrastructure, because we have vast amounts of infrastructure in the country. And so this now will be the 2 units, sort of the spearheads for Telkom delivering services to all of you. And this has been driven primarily by the acceleration of digital transformation over the last 6-7 months, occasioned globally by the COVID pandemic.
Yes.
We found that in March, when this happened upon us, we had to scramble as a company. We had to scramble to sort of rebalance and optimize our network system from the more corporate to residential space, because people are moving from the corporate to the residential space.
Yes.
And while we believe that we will hopefully go back to normal in the next few months, we will not go back to where we were before COVID. The post-COVID era has fundamentally changed the way we transact business, in the professional space, and then we interact socially with ourselves. We are moving into a decidedly lower touch, lower contact era, into a decidedly more virtual era where people used to go to malls to watch movies. More increasingly, they'll be ordering them from home. Where people used to go to restaurants, I think the restaurant business would be more of um, a treat, so to speak. You want to go out and have dinner in a different kind of ambience, but it will no longer be a convenience. Up to now, restaurants have also been conveniences, but now it's much more convenient to order food on your home because the technology to facilitate that is what we are going to be working on and deploying in this digital transformation era.
Yes.
And that goes for online education, telecommuting, working from home. I mean, I expect fully that a lot of employers will adopt sort of a hybrid work from home, work at work model, to help enhance the productivity of their employees. Because we have found in our own experience at Telkom, because we had to adopt work at home protocols, that there are some people who thrive working from home, there are others who thrive working in the office. Some people want a mix and match. And all this has been occasioned by what's happened over the last 6, 7 months
Yes.
and caused an acceleration of digitization of what we do professionally and socially. And when we say as Telecom Kenya that we shall drive and lead the digital transformation era through Telecom Digital, this is what we're talking about. And so this is kind of the new direction that we're alluding to in our new strategy and in the reorganization that we're undertaking.
How do you see the telecommunication space in the country? People will say it is already matured enough. People will say it's already developing. From where you're sitting this morning, where would you put it at?
It is foolhardy for anyone to speak of technology maturing because technology is always on a constant improvement, a constant trend of improvement. I mean, when computers appeared on the scene in the early 90s, personal computers appeared on the scene in offices and eventually in homes in the 90s and the 90s, people thought, okay, now we have computers. This has matured. Little did they expect that home PC would eventually be on our phone devices combined with cameras.
Yes.
Right? And so we are seeing, and I fully expect that over the next year, decade, we shall see significant improvements in technology and our ability to manipulate technology and create gadgets and devices that we can deploy to the convenience of the consumer and our customers. And this is a global trend. And so I think that it's far from maturing. It has moved tremendously, obviously, over the last 10 or so years.
Yes.
When speaking to mobile telephony specifically, I mean, the journey from the very simple device that introduced mobility in the 90s, and all it offered you was voice connectivity, that you could talk to somebody while you're walking around or while you're driving around. Now is a television, is a movie theater, is a computer, right? Is a camera, is a video camera. We didn't have video cameras 30 years ago. Now, not only do we have video cameras which are accessible to you, but they're on our phones. And so we expect to see now what we have is a mobile platform. Okay, and that mobile platform will continue to have a lot of developments in technology and convenience over the years. And this is what I refer to as a digital transformation. And we will find as we move into the age of artificial intelligence, AI in short, big data, which will tremendously enhance data analysis and therefore the manipulation of data to your benefit. And if you're not careful, sometimes too, there are downsides to that.
There's downside, yes.
But big data, AI, all those portend to tremendous convenience developments into the future. We will see IoT, Internet of Things, right? Which is there are people who are now saying not only will we have Internet of Things, we will have Internet of Everything, IoE, right? So when you talk about maturing, telecommunications maturing, what will telecommunications be? Already telecommunications is morphing into something different, which is why we at Telkom are saying we're going to grow into a technology company, where telecommunications will only be a component of what we do, because telecommunications will become an enabler, really a commodity for the real service of convenience to our consumers that we should.
I mean, one of the things that stand out is mobile penetration in the country. Quite high. Some people put it at more than 100%, depending on how you intend to look at it. But another factor stands out is that, well, some other economies are talking about 5G, some are even talking about 6G, is when we're still talking about 4G, which has not really gotten to other areas as well. So now talk to me about your new drive as regards to this. Do you see the mobile phone being your magic bullet to unlocking this digitization drive? And talk to me about 4G. What opportunities do you see open for Telkom Kenya in that space?
Look, 4G is a prevailing technology today. It is the most recent and most expansive technology that we have today.
Yes.
Having started down the basics of 2G,
Yes.
right, and moved to Edge and then 3G and now 4G, and of course you've alluded to 5G and even 6G into the future. What has transpired as part of this acceleration of what were really pre-existing trends prior to COVID, or the last 7 months, is that the use cases or the use cases for 5G, for instance, which, if you ask most people 7 months ago about 5G and Africa, for instance, one would have said, look, yeah, 5G is on its way, but another 5 years' time, perhaps. What has happened is that now that time frame has been accelerated, clearly accelerated, because the adoption of technological substitutes for physical interaction has accelerated.
Yes.
Because of COVID. We have been forced by this pandemic to do certain things virtually, right? And what that has brought about is the realization in some cases that this very negative, once in a century happenstance of a pandemic that has killed, unfortunately, so many people, right? I mean, and really COVID is something that I would hope that not in our lifetimes or our children's lifetimes shall we see something like this again. Even though if we're not careful, we might, because we've tampered with nature, unfortunately. Because the people have lost so many loved ones, and certain economies have been disrupted, some permanently, certain businesses, employers. But having said that, what it has occasioned is an acceleration of the adoption of technology, much faster than what the trends were pre-COVID.
Yes.
And some of this, even in the post-COVID era, whenever that will be, some of these habits will remain. Partly because people are now happy to see what they're able to do virtually. There are many things that you have to get up from your office or from your house and go and get done, which really, if you're able, at the touch of a button, or a screen for that matter, to do from where you're seated at home, you would prefer to do that. And what has happened is that people have discovered they can do so many things that way. On the converse, technology providers, manufacturers, have also dusted their 5-year plans and accelerated them into 1-2 year plans, because they realize what they plan to do in 3-5 years is now happening in 1 year. So they need to also ensure that they have faster, they're more agile in adapting to consumer trends, because consumer feedback is coming back to them. And we as connectivity providers, Telkom Kenya, and I'm sure some of our colleagues in the same space, have seen a surge in connectivity, especially in residential areas, where in corporate space it might be a bit, there might be a mixed reaction in the corporate space because of people working from home, and therefore working a lot less from the office, but office space will still remain. But in the residential areas, the demand for connectivity and bandwidth has shot up.
Yes.
And because of the increased conveniences occasioned by technology, this demand, in my view, will continue to increase. And therefore, there we come in terms of connectivity. But connectivity will become commoditized eventually. People will take it for granted, the way you take electricity for granted. Nowadays what you care about is that your TV is on.
The TV is on.
Or your fridge is on.
Not the electricity itself.
Electricity, you take it for granted, right?
Yes.
Connectivity in telecommunications is going to end up there. And therefore, what shall Telkom Kenya be doing? We want to be able to move up that value chain and be able to offer value-added services. Because that is where the consumer will have expectations of us that we must rise to the occasion too.
Everybody did see the headline, Balloon Internet Services for the very first time in Kenya, the Loon LLC partnership. Could you kindly give us what you're targeting from that project as Telkom Kenya? And could you give us an update of where the project is currently as we talk?
I think it's important to understand where Loon lies in sort of our map as Telkom Kenya. Loon is a partner of Telkom's, and Loon really is an Alphabet company. Alphabet is the mother company of Google. So Loon is a sister company to Google out of California.
Yes.
And they developed this balloon technology several years ago as a disaster, to facilitate disaster recovery efforts. In Panama, in areas like Peru, not Panama, but areas like Peru where you have disasters in Central America, they have deployed this technology quite successfully when particular disasters have destroyed your terrestrial communications, and therefore the only way to communicate was to find another way to bring about a signal. We are now part of an experiment, I would say, to deploy this technology for the very first time globally in a commercial sense. Really wasn't developed for that purpose, for a commercial environment. Obviously, it is not at the same level or quality as terrestrial base stations, and which we will need as Telkom Kenya to continue expanding our terrestrial or land-based network. But in areas which are otherwise difficult to access terrestrial, mountainous regions or valleys, or places which are very sparsely populated as to not to be able to allow for any viable commercial deployment of terrestrial base stations. This is where we want to deploy the Loon balloons with our partners. So we as Telkom Kenya offer the signal. We provide the signal as we normally would provide the signal.
Yes.
And Loon now bring their balloons, okay, and attempt to find a way where jointly we can be able to beam our signal to areas that cannot be reached terrestrially. So I think I would like to make it very clear that our preference still, even as we go through this experiment, is to offer you services through terrestrial base stations, which are much more reliable and are tried and tested. But in areas where we may not be able to deploy terrestrial base stations, then we shall deploy those balloons. We're still in the early phases of this, what we call it, the pilot project, the pilot phase of this, to see how the technology, the balloons, what we call aerial base stations, work and connect to land-based, our signals.
Yes.
And then also to test to see how these signals can be beamed now from the balloons back to Earth. And given the fact that they are powered also, they're way above your normal atmospheric spaces, double the flying height of your normal jet liner, which means they are powered by sunlight. They're solar powered, right? And of course, the vagaries of the 24-hour solar clock. So there are many things we have to test and understand how this would work.
Yes.
And therefore, what does a commercial model look like for this? So we're still in that early phase stage, and in the next few months we'll be able to come up with a more conclusive assessment of how this technology can best be deployed.
Yes.
Now that time we should be able to come publicly and say, here's what we shall do.
It's exactly what we have.
Yeah, exactly. But really the focus is going to be terrestrial base stations.
Yes.
And let me conclude by saying something which is important for your viewership, is that, because people have asked me, can I get Loon on my phone? Loon
Yes.
is a technology much like all your other technology providers whom we use as technology companies. So you don't know if our base stations, whether they are Nokia or Huawei or ZTE or Ericsson, you have no idea, do you? All you get is a Telkom signal.
Just a signal, and I'm done with that.
You make a phone call on Telkom Kenya SIM card, signal comes through, you have no idea if it's a base station that is on land or in the air. You have no idea who the manufacturer or the provider is. Whether it is Loon or Ericsson or Huawei, that's not your problem. It's our problem, right? So I think people shouldn't expect to be able to see a Loon signal on their phone. What I can say is that if you happen to be in an area which is very remote, mountainous, and there are clearly no terrestrial base stations, and you have a Telkom signal, it is likely going to be Loon.
Yes.
Right? But you do not say Loon.
Yes.
You still say Telkom.
Which takes me back to exactly the basis of that project And before I ask you that question, so far with what you've seen on the ground, does it give some sense of optimism that a big announcement is coming soon?
I will let us conclude the exercise and come back to you.
Yes.
Not with half-baked responses,
Yes.
but with fully processed, a complete pilot project.
Yes.
You've already tested, and you've seen the test.
Yes, we
the
have already
signal
seen the
does
test,
big.
yes. Mhm.
But really, it is about is it viable enough to be commercially deployable in vast areas? That is what we have to test, and I have no answer for you right now. It's
Yes.
still early stage, early days, and really, a big part of this is with our partners' responsibility. Our responsibility is to generate the original signal, which we do. It's easy. We have the base stations. It is much more on the loan side. Our loan partners who are managing the balloons, who design the balloons, and who are going to be, transporting them all the way from California to Kenya. They're the ones really that we are trying to work with, and we need to rely on them to be able to confirm to us what they can and cannot do.
Yes.
But I think it is important because your question was about, you framed that question as part of, what we intend to do in the future. I think it's important to see Loon as one of many potential innovations Telkom will be getting into, right? Telkom is not becoming Loon, right? Telkom remains Telkom Kenya. Terrestrial base stations remain the mainstay of the signaling that we give to you. Loon is an innovation we're looking at and we're very hopeful on, but it is one of many innovations we shall be looking at going forward because innovations would become a significant part of the business of Telkom Kenya because agility in the midst of technological developments that are happening globally is a very important part of what we're going to be doing in the new direction of Telkom Kenya.